The wind howled outside the small metal workshop on the edge of the human colony known as Outpost 12. The air was cold and heavy, filled with dust that glowed under the dull red sky. Ethan Cole sat bent over his workbench, sweat dripping from his forehead as sparks flew from the machine in his hands. His fingers trembled, not from fear, but from exhaustion, and maybe a bit of hope. The object before him looked delicate. A curved silver visor made from alien glass and human circuitry, glowing faint blue from its power core. He had spent weeks building it, sometimes working until dawn. The visor wasn't a weapon, nor was it meant for profit. It was something far rarer, a gift. Across the room, sitting quietly on a chair covered with an old blanket, was a girl, not human, but alien. Her skin was pale and smooth, almost silver. Her long white hair flowed down her back like silk, and her eyes, though open, were empty, colorless, lifeless. She was blind. Her name was Sael. She was one of the Velans, a peaceful race once known for their sight that went beyond vision. They could see colors humans couldn't imagine, could sense emotion through light itself. But during the human-Velan war, her people had been nearly wiped out. A blast had destroyed her village. Shrapnel had taken her eyes. Ethan had found her weeks ago, hiding near the scrapyards, starving and afraid. He had taken her in, fed her, protected her, and now he wanted to give her sight again. "Hold still," he said softly, his voice trembling. "This should work this time." Sarai tilted her head slightly, her expression calm but uncertain. "You said that before." "I know," he said with a small smile. "But this time, I mean it." He gently lifted the visor and placed it over her eyes. The blue light flickered, faint at first, then steadier. A soft hum filled the air. Sarai gasped. Her hands rose slowly, as if trying to catch something invisible in front of her. "I can see light," she whispered. Ethan froze. "You can?" She nodded, tears forming under the edges of the visor. "Shapes colors you." He exhaled sharply, his heart pounding in his chest. He smiled, the first real smile he'd had in years. "You did it," she said, her voice trembling between disbelief and joy. "No," Ethan said quietly. "We did it." For a few precious seconds, the world felt peaceful again. She turned her head, watching the soft glow of the lamps, the dust swirling in the air like tiny stars. Her lips parted in awe. Then a deep rumble shook the ground. The lamp flickered. The hum of engines filled the sky, loud, mechanical, heavy. Ethan's smile faded instantly. He moved to the window and pushed the blinds aside. Through the thick dust, he saw lights, bright white and moving fast. 3 black transport ships, low and silent, descending toward the colony. Sarai's head turned. "What's wrong?" "Stay here," Ethan said quickly, his voice suddenly sharp. He went to his table, grabbed a small plasma tool, and switched off every light in the workshop. The hum of engines grew louder. Shadows passed across the windows. Then bang! A heavy knock at the metal door, echoing through the small room. Sarai jumped. "Who is that?" Ethan didn't answer. Another bang, louder this time, shook the door on its hinges. "Ethan Cole!" A deep mechanical voice shouted. "By order of Earth Command, open the door." Sarai's breathing quickened. "Earth Command," she whispered. "Why are they here?" Ethan's throat went dry. "Because of me," he muttered. He turned, quickly pulling the small hatch open under his workbench. "Get in," he ordered. She hesitated. "Ethan, what's happening?" "Please, just trust me." She slid under the table as he sealed the panel behind her. The door shook again, this time with the sound of metal boots outside. Ethan grabbed a wrench, pretending to be calm. When he opened the door, 3 armored soldiers stood in the dust. Their black suits reflected the faint red light of the sky, their helmets glowing faintly with red visors. "Ethan Cole," one said coldly, "you're under investigation for unauthorized alien technology and harboring non-human life forms." Ethan forced a laugh. "I'm just a mechanic. You must have the wrong place." The soldier stepped inside, without permission. The others followed, scanning the room with their rifles raised. One carried a handheld scanner, a blinking device that beeped faintly as it swept across the area. Sarai's heart pounded beneath the table. She could hear every word, every footstep. Her new visor hummed faintly, still active, still connected. Through its energy pulse, she could sense movement, like heat through darkness. "Nothing here," one soldier muttered. Then the scanner beeped again. Louder, closer. The soldier turned toward the workbench. Ethan moved fast, knocking over a tray of metal parts. The clatter filled the room. "You people ever clean up after yourselves?" he said loudly, stepping in their way. "Step aside," the leader barked. Ethan stood firm. "There's nothing under there." The soldier aimed his weapon. "We'll see." He kicked the bench aside, and the blue glow from beneath flickered through the crack. Before they could react, the visor flashed, blindingly bright. A shockwave of blue energy erupted across the room, throwing the soldiers back. Sparks exploded from their scanners. The walls shook. Ethan fell hard against the table, his ears ringing. When the light faded, Sarai stood there, trembling but awake. The visor glowed bright and alive, the blue light pulsing like fire. She looked around, breathing heavily. "I saw them," she whispered. "Not just their faces, their intentions. Their fear." Ethan stared, stunned. "The visor, what did it do?" "I don't know," she said, shaking. "But I can see more than before. I can see energy, emotions." Ethan's pulse quickened. This wasn't just sight. The visor had somehow connected to the Velan neural field, a long-lost power humans had only read about in war reports. Outside, another sound grew louder. Dozens of footsteps, more engines, more lights. "They're coming back," Ethan said, voice low and urgent. Sarai turned toward the door. "Then we run." Ethan hesitated. "You can't." She looked at him, her glowing eyes now calm and sharp. "You gave me sight, Ethan. Now let me help you see the truth." She grabbed his hand. "Let's go." Together. They ran out the back, into the storm, as the next wave of soldiers landed at the colony gates. Behind them, in the dim light of the ruined workshop, the visor's blue glow faded, leaving behind only the sound of sirens and the name of the man who had built a miracle that could change everything. The night sky over Outpost 12 burned with orange lightning. The storm was alive, sheets of dust rolling across the horizon like a living wall. Ethan Cole ran through the narrow alleys of the abandoned colony, his heart pounding, his hand gripping Sarai's tightly. Behind them, alarms blared and soldiers shouted orders through static-filled radios. "Stop. Human and non-registered alien. Halt immediately." Ethan pulled her into the shadow of a fallen cargo shuttle. The air smelled of rust and ozone. His lungs ached, his hands were shaking. "We can't go toward the landing zone," he whispered. "They'll surround us there." Sarai nodded. The faint blue glow from her visor illuminated her pale face in the darkness. "Then where?" Ethan looked up toward the edge of the colony, a jagged wall of steel and rock where the desert began. The tunnels. They were built before the war. Old mining routes. If we reach them, we can disappear. Sarai tilted her head, the visor pulsing. "I can see heat signatures. Many soldiers moving fast." She pointed northeast. "They're trying to cut us off." Ethan stared at her, amazed. "You can see that? Through walls." She touched the visor gently. "I don't know how, but I can sense everything. The visor, it connects in my mind. It feels alive." Ethan's jaw tightened. He didn't understand the science, but he didn't need to. Right now, her strange new sight was the only thing keeping them alive. They moved silently between ruined buildings. The colony that once housed hundreds of humans now stood empty, metal skeletons, flickering lights, and the distant hum of forgotten machines. Every few steps, Sarai would whisper what she saw. The heat of soldiers hiding behind walls, the faint energy of scanners sweeping the streets, even the pulse of drones flying overhead. At one point, she stopped suddenly and held Ethan's arm. "Don't move." He froze. Two soldiers walked past him on the street, rifles glowing in the stormlight. Sarai's visor dimmed, hiding its glow. Ethan's breath caught in his throat as one of the soldiers stopped, looking toward their hiding spot. "Movement," the soldier muttered. The other shook his head. Negative. Just debris. Ethan's grip tightened on his plasma cutter. If they found them now, it would be over. Sarai closed her eyes. A soft hum radiated from the visor, so faint that Ethan could barely hear it. The soldier blinked, confused, then suddenly turned away. "Let's go," Sarai whispered after they were gone. Ethan frowned. "What did you do?" "I made them not see us," she said softly, almost unsure of her own words. "The visor bends light. It hides our heat for a few seconds." Ethan shook his head in disbelief. "You're telling me that thing can cloak us now?" "It can try," she said, "but it drains me." He saw her knees tremble, her breath growing heavy. The visor wasn't just a tool, it was pulling energy from her. "We'll rest once we're out," he said, steadying her. They reached the outer wall of the colony just as the sirens intensified. Searchlights cut through the storm, sweeping the ground like blades. Ethan knelt beside a broken vent, pulling at the rusted bolts. "This connects to the old shaft tunnels." "Hold on." "Wait," Sarai said. She turned her head toward the sky, her visor glowing brighter. Drones, 6 of them, approaching fast. Ethan cursed under his breath. He yanked the final bolt loose, pushed the grate aside, and helped her crawl in first. The tunnel was narrow and dark, the air thick with dust and echoes. He slid in after her, pulling the grate shut just as a beam of white light scanned the ground outside. From above, muffled voices called out, "We've got fresh tracks." 2 targets headed east. Ethan held his breath. The light passed over their hiding spot, then moved on. Silence. Only the faint hum of Sarai's visor remained. After a long minute, Ethan finally exhaled. That was close. Sarai smiled weakly. "You humans breathe too loud." Ethan gave a dry laugh despite the tension. "Yeah, well, you glow too bright." They crawled through the narrow tunnel for nearly half an hour before it widened into a vast underground chamber, the old mining station. The room was silent except for the hum of old generators and dripping water. Rusted machinery stood like ghosts of another time. Ethan collapsed against the wall, catching his breath. "We'll rest here for a bit." Sarai sat beside him, touching the visor gently. "It's changing, Ethan. The circuits, they feel like veins. Like it's part of me now." He studied her face. She looked different, stronger, but also distant, as if something else was speaking through her. "Sarai," he said quietly, "when that blast hit the soldiers back in my workshop, was that you at the visor?" Her lips trembled. "I don't know. I felt their intentions, their anger, and I just wanted them to stop. Then the light came. It wasn't anger, it was fear. Their fear." Ethan swallowed hard. "So it reacts to your emotions?" She nodded. "And it's growing stronger." Before he could respond, the tunnel lights flickered, once, twice, then went dark. A deep metallic thud echoed in the distance. Ethan stood quickly. They found another entrance. Sarai's visor flared blue again. "No, not soldiers. Something else." Ethan frowned. "What do you mean?" Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Machines. Drones. But they're not human." The sound grew louder. Metallic legs scraping against stone. Mechanical voices repeating distorted commands in a language neither of them recognized. Ethan grabbed his plasma cutter and pulled Sarai behind an old generator. "Villain tech," he whispered. She shook her head. "No, older. Ancient." The first drone entered the chamber, tall, insect-like, with 3 glowing red eyes and long, blade-like arms. It scanned the room slowly. More followed. Ethan's heart raced. "We can't fight those." Sarai looked at him, then at the visor's faint reflection in the metal floor. "Maybe I can." "Don't," Ethan said quickly. "You'll burn yourself out." She closed her eyes. "If we don't, they'll find us anyway." The visor pulsed once, then exploded with a burst of blue light that filled the chamber. The ancient drones froze mid-movement, their eyes flickering. Their bodies twitched, then fell silent, motionless. Ethan stared, speechless. The air buzzed with static. "What did you just do?" Sarai opened her eyes. "I showed them light." He blinked. "Light?" She turned toward him, her face pale but calm. Their minds were trapped in darkness for centuries. The visor showed them what they had forgotten. Peace. Ethan stepped closer, lowering his tool. Sarai, what is that visor really? She touched the side of it gently. Not a weapon. Not a tool. It's a bridge between thought and matter. Before Ethan could say anything else, her expression changed. She froze. They found us, she whispered. Ethan turned toward the tunnel. The faint red glow of soldier helmets appeared in the dark, approaching fast. Move, he shouted, grabbing her hand. As they disappeared into the deeper tunnels, the soldiers entered the chamber, stepping over the fallen alien drones. Their leader stared at the glowing residue left behind by Sarai's visor and muttered into his comm, Command! This is Unit 9. Confirmed alien-human contact. Subject, A displays high-level energy interference. Orders. A cold voice replied through static. Bring them in alive or destroy them both. The tunnel stretched endlessly beneath the desert, dark, cold, and ancient. Every sound echoed. Ethan's boots against the stone, Sarai's steady breathing, the faint hum of the visor that now seemed alive. Dust fell from the ceiling as thunder rumbled far above. They had been walking for hours since escaping the soldiers and the mysterious drones. Ethan's flashlight flickered weakly, casting shaky circles of light across the walls. Strange carvings glimmered faintly under the dust. Alien symbols, spirals, and markings that looked too deliberate to be random. Sarai stopped. These are not human tunnels, she said quietly. Ethan frowned. You mean Velan? She shook her head slowly. Older. Much older. My ancestors spoke of a race that lived here long, before humans or Velans. They called them the Luminar, beings of pure energy and thought. Ethan ran his fingers over the carvings. Then why build tunnels? Energy doesn't need walls. They didn't build them for themselves, she said softly, tracing a glowing spiral with her fingers. They built them for the ones who came after, for those who would carry their light. Her words sent a shiver down his spine. You think that visor is connected to them? Sarai's voice dropped. I know it is. They kept moving, deeper and deeper, until the tunnel opened into a massive underground chamber. The ceiling rose high above them, glowing faintly with embedded crystals. In the center stood a giant circular structure, half buried in sand, humming with faint blue energy, the same color as her visor. Ethan stared in awe. What is that? Sarai stepped forward slowly, her visor pulsing brighter with every step. It's calling to me. Careful. Ethan warned. We don't know what it does. But she didn't stop. The visor's glow reflected on her face like firelight. It's not dangerous, she whispered. It's familiar, like home. As she approached the structure, lines of light began to move across its surface, like veins waking from sleep. The ground trembled. Ethan ran to her side. Sarai, stop. You're activating something. The circular device opened with a low hiss, revealing a column of blue-white energy in its core. Images flickered in the air, visions of worlds, galaxies, and beings made of light and shadow. Ethan shielded his eyes. Sarai stood still, her expression calm but distant. Her voice came out almost like a whisper inside his mind. They're showing me what happened. What do you mean, they? Ethan shouted, his voice echoing through the chamber. The Luminar. They created this world long before us. The visor is a fragment of their mind, a piece of their consciousness left behind to guide others. The light around her brightened until Ethan could barely see her silhouette. He reached out, grabbing her arm. Sarai, you're burning up. She turned toward him, tears glowing like tiny stars in her eyes. I can see everything, Ethan. The war, your people, mine, all fighting for the same fear. The fear of what we don't understand. He shook his head, desperate. You don't have to carry that. You don't know the galaxy anything. The light flickered, then dimmed. Sarai stumbled forward, collapsing into his arms. He caught her before she hit the ground, her breathing shallow but steady. I'm okay, she whispered weakly. Just too much at once. Ethan looked up at the glowing chamber. The images faded slowly, but one symbol remained on the wall, a spiral of light with two lines crossing it, almost like an eye. Sarai looked up at it. That's their mark, the Eye of Luminar. It means awakening. Awakening what? Ethan asked. Her expression darkened. Whatever they left behind. Hours later, after Sarai regained her strength, Ethan found a small data pad buried in the sand near the glowing column. It was human-made, old but still active. The screen blinked faintly. Project Lumina, Earth Command restricted files. Ethan's blood ran cold. This is an alien. It's ours. Sarai frowned. Your people knew about this place? He nodded slowly. Looks like it. They must have found it years ago and covered it up. He scrolled through the files. Most were corrupted, but fragments remained. He read aloud. Visor prototype discovered from Velan relics. Design interface with neural patterns. Experimental subject termination due to overload. Ethan stopped, his voice trembling. Termination? Sarai looked at him sharply. They tried to recreate the visor? Not just recreate it, Ethan said softly. They tested it on living beings. Her expression hardened. That's why they came for us. They think I'm their missing project. He clenched his fists. Then they're not going to stop. A low hum echoed through the tunnels again. Both turned toward the entrance. Faint red lights appeared in the distance. Drones. They found us, Ethan muttered. Sarai stood, her visor glowing once more. We can't fight here. The chamber's unstable. They ran toward the opposite tunnel. But before they could reach it, the drones opened fire, beams of red plasma slicing through the dust. Ethan pulled Sarai behind a fallen pillar. Sparks exploded around them. He gritted his teeth. We're trapped. Sarai closed her eyes. No, not yet. The visor's glow intensified again, surrounding her in a halo of blue light. The beams that hit the barrier bent away, deflected by invisible force. Ethan stared in disbelief. You're shielding us? It's not me, she said quietly. It's them, the Luminar. They're protecting their light. Then the ground beneath them shook violently. The blue column at the center of the chamber pulsed once, then erupted upward, a massive surge of energy shooting toward the surface. The drones were instantly vaporized. The whole chamber began to collapse. Run! Ethan shouted. They sprinted through the collapsing tunnels, chunks of stone falling all around them. The light from the visor lit their path. When they finally burst out into the open desert, the night sky was no longer red. It glowed blue from the beam rising miles into the air. Sarai stared up at it, tears in her eyes. They've awakened. Ethan caught his breath beside her. What does that mean? She turned to him slowly. It means the humans aren't the only ones who know we're here anymore. Far in the distance, a fleet of dark ships move across the horizon. Not human, not Velan. Something ancient had answered the call. Ethan's jaw tightened. Then we find out what they want before the soldiers do. Sarai nodded, gripping his hand. Together, and behind them, the beam continued to pierce the clouds, a silent signal to something far beyond the stars. The desert wind had gone silent. The only sound was a faint hum from a massive blue beam rising into the night sky, a pillar of light, so bright it turned the sand silver. Ethan and Sarai stood on a ridge, both breathing hard, dust and sweat covering their faces. Ethan looked up at the light. That beam! How far do you think it reaches? Sarai stared, her visor glowing faintly in rhythm with the energy. Far beyond this world. It's a call, not to humans, not to Velans, but to them. The Luminar. Ethan frowned. You mean the beings your ancestors talked about? The ones made of light. She nodded slowly. They've been asleep for ages, hidden under worlds like this. But now they're awake. A chill crawled down Ethan's spine. He had seen war, seen technology that could destroy cities, but nothing like this. Nothing alive and ancient. They found shelter in an abandoned solar outpost nearby. It was half buried in sand, its towers broken and covered with dust. Inside, the air was cold and still. Ethan lit an old lantern, filling the room with weak orange light. Sarai sat quietly on a metal crate, her hands trembling. It's changing me, she whispered. Ethan turned to her quickly. What do you mean? She looked up, her visor flickering between blue and white. The light is inside me now. I can feel it. When the luminar beam rose, it connected to the visor, and the visor is connected to me. Ethan knelt beside her. Is it hurting you? She shook her head. No, but it feels heavy, like I'm carrying memories that aren't mine. He touched her shoulder gently. We'll figure this out. Sarai, you're not alone. She smiled faintly. You humans always say that when you're terrified. He chuckled softly. Maybe, but I mean it. Their brief peace didn't last. Outside, the sound of engines approached, not human hovercrafts, but something deeper, mechanical, and wrong. Ethan moved to the window. Through the dust, he saw movement. Black shapes walking across the dunes, their red lights glowing faintly. Drones. Hundreds of them. Not again, Ethan muttered. But these were different. Slower, less stable, like broken machines being controlled by something unseen. Some dragged their own limbs, their circuits glowing faint blue instead of red. Sarai stood, the visor pulsing brighter. They're not hunting us, she said softly. Ethan looked at her. Then what are they doing? She tilted her head, her voice almost distant. They're answering the call. The signal changed them. He grabbed his weapon. Changed them how? Her tone darkened. They're not machines anymore. They're awake. Before Ethan could respond, the drone stopped moving. One turned its head toward the outpost, and then all of them, in eerie unison, turned the same way. Run, Ethan whispered. The drones began to move, faster this time. Their steps were heavy and uneven, as if fighting between two commands. The ground shook as they closed in. Ethan grabbed Sarai's hand, pulling her toward the back exit. They ran through the broken corridors, the sound of metal footsteps echoing behind them. A door burst open, and one of the drones lunged through, its metal arm slicing the air. Ethan fired. The plasma bolt hit the machine square in the chest, but instead of exploding, it simply absorbed the energy, glowing brighter. They're feeding off energy, he shouted. Sarai raised her hands instinctively. The visor blazed white, and a burst of light rippled from her like a wave. The drone froze mid-step, then fell silent, its lights fading. Ethan turned to her, eyes wide. You stopped it. Her breathing was shallow. No, I freed it. He frowned. Freed? The luminar light was trapped inside, she said weakly. The drones, they're vessels. Half alive, half machine. When I connect with them, I can release the consciousness inside. Ethan helped her up. You can't keep doing that. It's draining you. She looked at him with tired eyes. If I don't, they'll keep coming. And soon, the soldiers will too. Hours later, they made camp in the ruins of an old observation tower overlooking the endless desert. The blue beam in the distance had dimmed, but still reached the stars. Ethan sat beside a small fire, watching Sarai rest. She looked peaceful, her silver hair glowing faintly in the firelight. He sighed. What are you really, Sarai? You're not just a survivor, are you? Her eyes opened slowly. I was just a blind girl, she whispered. But when you gave me this visor, you didn't just give me sight. You gave me a doorway. A doorway to what? To something bigger than us. Before he could reply, her visor flickered again, images flashing rapidly across it. Her face went pale. Ethan, she said urgently, the soldiers, they found the chamber. They're trying to harness the beam's power. Ethan's blood ran cold. If they do that, they'll tear the planet apart, she finished. He stood, grabbing his gear. Then we stopped them. Sarai hesitated. You'd fight your own people for me? He met her eyes firmly. For you? For what's right. Every time. Her expression softened. Humans are strange. Yeah, he said with a smirk. But sometimes we do the right thing when it matters most. As dawn broke, the sky turned orange over the dunes. The blue beam flickered in the distance, surrounded now by black dropships and human machinery. The soldiers had built a perimeter, massive generators glowing with red light, cables connected directly into the ground. Sarai's visor pulsed rapidly. They're feeding off the luminar energy, she said. They don't understand what it is, They're trying to weaponize it. Ethan adjusted his rifle, scanning the horizon. Then we go in quiet and shut it down before they blow this world to hell. She nodded. The visor can disable their energy field for a short time, but you'll have to move fast. He gave a half smile. Fast is what I do best. As they approached the ridge overlooking the soldiers' camp, the air shimmered faintly, the same strange pulse as the visor. Ethan looked back at Sarai. Her expression was unreadable. Something's wrong, she said softly. I can feel them, not the soldiers. The Luminar, they're watching us. Ethan tightened his grip on his weapon. Then let's make sure they see what humans can really do. And together, they stepped into the storm of light and war, unaware that what waited from below would change the fate of both species forever. The morning sun rose red over the desert, bleeding through the dust like a wound in the sky. The blue beam that had split the heavens was weaker now, flickering with unstable pulses. Below it, Earth Command soldiers moved like ants across the sand, setting up generators, energy stabilizers, and cable that dug deep into the earth. Ethan and Sarai crouched behind a ridge, watching through the shimmering heat. They've built a conduit, Ethan muttered, tightening the strap of his rifle. They're draining the Luminar energy into their reactors. Sarai's visor glowed softly as she observed. They think it's power, she said. But it's not. It's consciousness, alive, aware. They're hurting it. Ethan looked at her. Can we stop it? She nodded slowly. Yes, but not without risk. If the energy collapses while still inside their machines, it'll explode. The entire desert could burn. Ethan exhaled, rubbing his temple. So either they destroy the planet or we do. Sarai's tone softened. No, we save it. That's what you humans do, isn't it? Ethan smiled faintly. When we can. They waited until dusk. When the storm winds rose again, they moved, two shadows sliding between dunes and metal. Sarai's visor dimmed to a soft gray, concealing its light. She walked close beside Ethan, her bare feet barely leaving prints in the sand. The camp was massive, hundreds of tents, towers, scanners, and soldiers armed with rifles humming with red plasma. Massive power cables connected to the glowing beam's base, where the earth itself pulsed like a living heart. Stay low, Ethan whispered. We'll start at the east tower, take down their comms first. Sarai nodded. Her voice was soft, calm. I can blind their sensors for 20 seconds. She closed her eyes, and the visor flared faintly. A low vibration rippled through the air, like a soft note from an unseen instrument. Ethan's wrist communicator went static. Now, she whispered. They ran. Through smoke and noise, past armed patrols and humming drones. The red lights of scanners blinked out one by one as they passed. Ethan moved like a ghost, his years as a soldier guiding him through the chaos. They reached the tower. Ethan hacked into the control panel, wires sparking beneath his hands. Just need a minute. Sarai turned her head, her visor flickering. We don't have one. Someone's coming. Footsteps. Voices. Ethan cursed under his breath and shoved the final cable into place. The tower went dark. Done. Then, a sharp voice behind them. Don't move. They turned slowly. For soldiers stood at the entrance, rifles raised. Their leader stepped forward, her black armor gleaming. Ethan froze when he saw her face. Commander Hale, he said quietly. Her cold blue eyes narrowed. I should have known. You always had a weakness for strays, Cole. Ethan's jaw tightened. You don't know what you're doing. That energy, it's not ours to take. She smirked. You think you're the hero here? We're saving humanity. That power can end every war we've ever started. Sarai spoke softly, her voice trembling. You can't control it. It will destroy you. Hale turned her weapon toward Sarai. Funny, you aliens said the same thing before we wiped your fleets out. Ethan stepped in front of Sarai, his voice low and dangerous. Put the gun down. Or what? Hale sneered. You'll shoot me? Your old commander? Ethan's fingers twitched. If I have to. Before anyone could move, the ground beneath them shook. The blue beam surged violently, throwing out arcs of lightning that danced across the sand. The sky split with thunder. Soldiers screamed as their machine sparked and exploded. Sarai's visor pulsed wildly, glowing white-hot. She fell to her knees, clutching her head. "They're crying," she gasped. Ethan knelt beside her. "Sarai, the Luminar, they're in pain." Commander Hale shielded her face from the light. "What's happening?" Sarai looked up slowly, her voice echoing with something not her own, calm, deep, almost godlike. "You took from the light. Now the light takes back." The energy surged again, and suddenly, the soldiers' rifles melted in their hands. Their visors flickered with alien symbols. Hale stumbled back in horror. "What is this?" she screamed. Ethan held Sarai as her body shook, the visor radiating blinding light. "You have to stop it. You'll kill everyone." Tears streamed down her face. "I'm trying." The light exploded outward, but instead of destroying, it transformed. The machine stopped firing. The soldiers froze in place, their armor glowing faintly blue. Their faces softened, eyes wide with confusion. Ethan looked around, stunned. "What did you do?" Sarai's voice was weak. "I showed them truth. For a few moments they can see what I see, every emotion, every life, every choice." The Luminar's vision. Commander Hale dropped her weapon, her eyes filled with tears. "What would we do?" Ethan stood slowly, still holding Sarai's hand. "Now you understand." But the moment didn't last. The generators began to overload, sparks bursting from their cores. The ground trembled violently. Sarai looked up, terrified. "The energy is unstable. They pulled too much. It's collapsing." Ethan turned to Hale. "Get your people out now." She nodded numbly, shouting orders as soldiers fled toward their ships. Ethan looked at the glowing heart of the beam, pulsing faster and faster. "Sarai, how do we shut it down?" She took a trembling breath. "I can't stop it, but I can absorb it." Ethan's eyes widened. "No, that'll kill you." She smiled faintly. "Maybe, but it will save everyone else." He grabbed her shoulders. "No, I won't let you. We'll find another way." Her voice softened. "You already gave me sight, Ethan. Let me give something back." Before he could stop her, she stepped toward the beam. The light surrounded her instantly, wrapping her body in pure energy. Her feet left the ground. Ethan shielded his eyes as her voice echoed through the storm. "The light is not meant to be owned. It must be free." A shockwave burst outward, tearing through the sky. The beam collapsed, folding into itself until it vanished completely. The desert fell silent. When the dust settled, Ethan stood alone beside a crater glowing faint blue. The soldiers were gone. The camp was destroyed. And Sarai, he looked around desperately. "Sarai, where are you?" Then a faint flicker of blue light appeared before him. The visor, floating gently in the air. He reached out with trembling hands and caught it. It was cold, but it pulsed once as if alive. Ethan sank to his knees, holding it close. "You promised we'd see it together," he whispered. The visor glowed faintly in response, a soft, gentle heartbeat. And then in the quiet wind, he heard her voice, not with his ears, but inside his mind. "You're not alone, Ethan. I can still see you." A tear rolled down his cheek. He looked up at the sky, now calm, painted gold by dawn, and whispered, "Then keep watching." The desert was silent now. The war machines were gone. The soldiers had fled, and the giant blue beam that once split the sky was nothing more than a fading shimmer in the air. The wind moved softly across the sand, carrying with it a heavy, hollow calm. Ethan Cole sat alone at the edge of the crater, where Sarai had vanished. His clothes were torn, his face streaked with dust and blood. In his hands, he held what was left of her, the visor. It no longer glowed, but it hummed faintly, as if something deep inside it still lived. He stared at it for a long time, whispering, "You saved everyone, but you left me behind." The visor pulsed once. Ethan froze. Slowly, he lifted it to his ear. There was a sound, soft, almost like breathing. Then a voice, distant but unmistakable. "Ethan!" He nearly dropped it. His heart raced. "Sarai, I'm here." Her voice was faint, like a memory carried on the wind. Ethan blinked back tears. "I thought you were gone. You disappeared into the light." I did, but the light didn't destroy me. It changed me. The Luminar, they saved me. He swallowed hard. Where are you? Everywhere, she said softly. In the sky, in the earth, in you. The visor connects us. I'm part of it now. He looked down at it, the faint blue glow returning along the edges of the frame. So you're alive? You're really alive. Not as before. I don't have a body, Ethan, but I can still see. I can still feel you. For a long moment, Ethan couldn't speak. He just sat there, clutching the visor, listening to her voice, caught between grief and wonder. By nightfall, he had returned to the ruined colony. Outpost 12 was quiet, the air filled with dust and silence. The soldiers had abandoned their camps. All that remained were broken machines and flickering screens. Ethan scavenged through the wreckage, collecting tools, rations, and a working generator. Sarai's voice guided him. To your left, Ethan, there's an intact plasma cell near the fallen rover. He found it exactly where she said. You can see everything now, can't you? He asked quietly. Not everything, she replied. But I can sense life, energy, thoughts. I can see the world through patterns of light. He smiled faintly. You sound like an angel. If I am, she said softly, then you're the human who built my wings. Ethan stopped, the words hitting him harder than he expected. You always didn't know how to break me, you know that? She laughed, a soft, beautiful sound that made the empty outpost feel alive again. Days passed. Ethan rebuilt the workshop, the same place where it all began. He repaired the broken circuits, restored the solar power, and placed the visor on a small metal stand in the center of the room. Every night, he'd talk to her, sometimes about the past, sometimes about nothing. Do you remember the first time you saw a light again? He asked one night. Yes, she said softly. You were crying. He chuckled. You noticed that, huh? You try to hide it behind that old mask of yours. Ethan leaned back in his chair. Guess I wasn't a very good actor. No, she said warmly. You were honest. That's why I trusted you. He smiled at himself, staring at the faint blue glow of the visor. But deep inside, he knew this peace couldn't last. On the fourth night, the power flickered. The lights dimmed, and a cold wind swept through the outpost. Ethan stood quickly. Sarai, what's happening? The visor glowed violently, pulsing faster and faster. They're coming, she said, her voice trembling. Who? The ones who followed the signal. Not soldiers, not drones. Something else. They're drawn to the energy left behind by the Luminar. Ethan grabbed his rifle and stepped outside. The sky above the desert was glowing faint red, dozens of fiery streaks descending through the clouds. Ships, he muttered. Not human. They're scavengers, Sarai said, worshippers of the old technology. They believe the Luminar's power is divine. If they find the visor, they'll destroy it. Ethan finished grimly. They'll destroy you, too. He clenched his jaw. Then they'll have to try. As the first ships landed, Ethan took position on the rooftop of the outpost. His plasma rifle hummed in his hands. Below, dark figures emerged from the smoke. Tall, armored beings with pale skin and glowing eyes. They spoke in a language he didn't understand, their voices echoing through the night like thunder. They call themselves the Karnas, Sarai whispered. They hunt relics of light, anything connected to the Luminar. They think if they absorb the energy, they can become gods. Ethan took aim at one of the figures moving toward the workshop. Not tonight. He fired. The plasma bolt hit the ground beside them, exploding into a burst of light and sand. The Karnas hissed, their weapons rising. Ethan ducked behind cover as beams of red energy sliced through the walls. The outpost shook on a barrage. Ethan, there's too many. Sarai cried. I'm not leaving you again, he shouted, reloading. Not this time. You can't fight them all. Watch me. He fired again and again until his rifle overheated. Sweat ran down his face. His heart pounded. The Karnas were closing in, their silhouettes flickering through the dust. Then, suddenly, silence. The visor inside the workshop began to glow brighter, blindingly bright. Ethan turned. Sarai? Her voice echoed, calm and powerful. You gave me light, Ethan. Now let me protect you with it. The glow expanded, washing over the outpost like a wave. The Carnists screamed, their armor disintegrating in the white radiance. The ground trembled as the light spread farther, swallowing the ships, the dunes, the storm itself, until everything went still. When Ethan opened his eyes, the night sky was clear again. The desert was quiet. The ships were gone. He stumbled back into the workshop. The visor sat where it always did, dim now, faintly humming. He fell to his knees. Sarai, are you there? Silence. Please, he whispered. Don't leave me again. The visor flickered once, weakly. Then her voice returned, faint but warm. I'm tired, Ethan. The light, it's fading. He swallowed hard. Then rest. I'll keep you safe this time. Promise me something, she whispered. Anything. When I'm gone, don't stop building. Keep creating light. That's what makes you human. He nodded, tears falling onto the metal floor. I promise. Then I can rest easy, she said softly, because you'll keep my world alive. The visor dimmed slowly until only a faint blue line remained. Ethan sat in the quiet room, holding it close to his chest, whispering into the silence. You're not just light, Sarai. You're the reason I can still see. And outside, far beyond the dunes, the stars flickered, as if one of them had just smiled back. A year passed. The desert had grown quiet again. The war was over, at least on this side of the galaxy. But the silence didn't feel like peace. It felt like loss. Ethan Cole walked across the dunes every morning. The same path leading from the ruins of Outpost 12 to the crater, where the blue beam had once touched the sky. He always carried one thing with him. The visor. It no longer glowed, no longer hummed, but he kept it close like a piece of his own heart. He had built her a small memorial near the crater, a metal stand shaped like open hands, holding the visor in the center. Around it, he planted tiny flowers that grew from nutrient soil packs. Somehow, they survived the desert wind. Every morning, he sat beside it and spoke softly. You said light never dies, he murmured, brushing sand from the petals. So, where did yours go? The wind answered with silence. That night, a storm rolled over the dunes. The sky crackled with lightning. Ethan sat inside the rebuilt workshop, working on a new project, a small drone meant to record data from the crater. He didn't notice the power fluctuation until the lights began to flicker. The generator hummed, louder and louder. Then the visor, sitting quietly on his desk, began to glow. Ethan froze. His tools fell from his hand. The glow was faint at first, then stronger, a soft blue pulse like a heartbeat. He whispered, Sarai? No answer. He leaned closer, his voice shaking. Come on, talk to me, please. Then a whisper, faint and cracked with static. Ethan, he jumped to his feet. Sarai, you're here. I never left, her voice said, distant and slow, like it came from deep underwater. I've been searching. Searching for what? For others like me. For the Luminar that still sleep. Ethan blinked. You found them? Not yet, but I feel them scattered across worlds. Their energy buried, forgotten. He stepped back, struggling to process it. You've been traveling? Through energy fields. Through the current of thought, she said softly. The Luminar aren't dead, Ethan. They're waiting for the ones who can bring balance between light and flesh. He frowned. Balance? What does that mean? It means humans and Luminar were never enemies. We were incomplete halves of the same design. Ethan stared at the visor, his heart pounding. So what now? You come back, we tell him the truth, we rebuild. But her voice grew softer. It's not that simple. The Carnists, they returned. They found the remains of the beam. They're spreading across worlds, hunting what light remains. Ethan clenched his fists. Then we stopped them, again. You can't stop them with weapons, she said gently. You stop them with unity. He exhaled slowly. You sound like you've been spending time with philosophers. No, she said softly. Just the stars. The following weeks changed everything. Ethan began decoding the last human data logs from Earth Command. Buried deep in their encrypted archives, he found something shocking. Project Lumina wasn't the first. There were 7 colonies like Outpost 12, each built near ancient Luminar ruins. Each one had vanished mysteriously, and each site had left behind a single signature, the same pulse frequency as Sarai's visor. When he told her, her tone darkened. Then there are others, like me, others who might have survived the transformation. You mean more Velans with Luminar light? Ethan asked. Maybe not Velans, she said. Maybe even humans. That thought chilled him. Days turned into nights. Ethan worked without rest, rebuilding one of the old drones into a signal receiver. His goal, to trace the Luminar frequency, to find the other voices of light. Sarai helped guide him through the design, her voice calm and precise, like she'd become part of the machine itself. Increase the resonance band, narrow the pulse width, let it listen, not shout. He smiled. You become quite the engineer. I learned from the best, she replied warmly. He tightened the final bolt. All right, here goes nothing. The drone rose slowly into the air, its sensors glowing faint blue. For a moment, the entire workshop filled with light, gentle, alive, familiar. Ethan's eyes widened. It's working. Sarai's voice trembled. Ethan, I feel them. The others. So many lost, but still there. Where? Everywhere. But one is close. Beneath us. He froze. Beneath us? Under the old mines. The same tunnels where we found the Luminar chamber. He grabbed his packing tools. Then we go find them. Hours later, Ethan descended alone into the tunnels. The air was cold, heavy with dust. His flashlight flickered over the familiar carvings on the walls. Spirals, eyes, and symbols that once glowed. The deeper he went, the stronger the signal became. The visor, clipped to his belt, began to hum again. You're close, Sarai whispered. I can feel their light. He reached the old chamber, the one where Sarai had first awakened the beam. The ruins were silent, but something shimmered faintly in the center. Ethan stepped closer. Sarai, what is that? A fragment, she said softly. A seed of Luminar light. It floated above the sand, glowing like a small heart. Ethan reached out, and the moment his fingers touched it, the entire room lit up. The walls glowed with blue veins of energy. The symbols came alive. The air filled with whispers. Ethan, Sarai said urgently, the seed is responding to you. The light expanded, wrapping around him like liquid fire. He gasped, his body trembling as visions filled his mind. Galaxies, ancient cities, beings of light and thought. And then her face. Sarai, not as a hologram, not a voice, but as herself, standing before him, radiant and alive. He reached out, unable to believe it. Sarai, she smiled. You call me back. His voice cracked. How? I thought you were gone. The light remembered me, she said softly. And it remembered you. He took a slow step closer, afraid to blink. Are you real? She nodded. As real as you believe me to be. He smiled through tears. Then I'm never letting you go again. She touched his chest gently, her hand glowing. You won't have to. We're connected now, light and life together. The seed pulsed once, brighter than ever, and the entire chamber filled with warmth. Outside, the stars shifted, a faint blue shimmer spreading across the horizon. The light had returned. The sky above Outpost 12 was no longer empty. A thin blue veil of light covered the stars like a living aura. Ethan and Sarai stood together in the glowing chamber beneath the sand, the energy from the Luminar seed spreading around them like a heartbeat that reached across the world. Sarai's form was solid again, her silver-white hair floating slightly in the soft glow, her eyes bright and alive behind the visor she once wore. Ethan still couldn't believe she was really there. You're made of light now, he said quietly. She smiled. Light is just another form of life. You taught me that. He looked around as the walls vibrated with low tones, ancient frequencies that seemed to wake the entire planet. What's happening? The seed is calling the others. Sarai replied. All the Luminar remnants across the colonies. Every fragment of light. They're listening. Then we need protected, Ethan said. Because they're coming. Outside, the sandstorm in a spiral as shadows fell from the sky. Dozens of ships, black and gleaming. The Karnas fleet. They had followed the signal of the Luminar seed across the stars. The invasion. The ground shook as the Karnas landed. Their war engines towered over ruins, their weapons glowing red like molten veins. Through their helmets, their eyes burned with zeal. They weren't just soldiers, they were believers. Ethan stood at the mouth of the tunnel with his plasma rifle, the visor strapped to his arm like a shield. Behind him, the Luminar seed throbbed with power. Sarai's voice echoed in his mind. They can feel the light but don't understand it. They will try to possess it. Then we'll teach them why they shouldn't. The first Karnas assault came hard. Beams of red energy lit the night. Explosions tore through the dunes. Ethan ducked behind a ridge, firing short, control bursts. Each shot hit true, but the Karnas armor healed itself like liquid metal. Sarai lifted her hand. Light spiraled from her palm, forming a shield that deflected the enemy fire. Her voice grew deeper, resonating with the Luminar frequency. The air itself seemed to sing. They can't see truth, she said. Only fear. Then show them something else, Ethan said, reloading. Sarai closed her eyes. A blinding wave of blue light erupted from her, not a weapon, but a vision. The Karnas froze mid-charge. Their weapons lowered as images flooded their minds. Memories of their own worlds, their families, their lost son. They saw what they had forgotten, love, not power. Some fell to their knees. Others dropped their guns. Ethan watched in awe. You just stopped an army without firing a shot. Sarai's voice was gentle. They stopped themselves. But the victory was brief. Above them, the largest Karnas ship descended. A dark fortress that blotted out the stars. It hovered low, its core glowing crimson. Ethan shielded his eyes. They're charging a planet breaker cannon. Sarai looked to the Luminar seed. It will destroy everything. Ethan, we have to finish the awakening. The final choice. The Luminar seed rose from the ground, spinning slowly. The entire planet began to vibrate. Ethan could feel the energy moving through his bones. What does that mean? Finish it, he shouted over the noise. Sarai looked at him, eyes glowing like stars. If the awakening is complete, the Luminar will return, not as gods, but as a force of peace. But it needs a conduit, a link between flesh and light. Realization hit him. You mean you? She nodded quietly. I was born of light and made whole by you. I can connect them, but I can't do it alone. He stepped closer. Then take me with you. Her voice broke. If you join the awakening, Ethan, you'll never return. Your body can't survive the transition. He smiled sadly. Then I guess I don't need a body. The ground cracked. Lightning tore through the sky. The Karnas flagship fired its weapon, a red beam of pure destruction. Ethan grabbed Sarai's hand. Now or never. She looked into his eyes, fear and love woven together. Then she placed her other hand on the Luminar seed. Together, she whispered. The awakening. The world exploded in light. The red beam from the Karnas ship never reached the ground. It met the blue wave rising from the chamber and was consumed by it. The two energies merged, twisting into a sphere of white fire that expanded outward, swallowing the desert, the ships, the sky itself. In that light, Ethan saw everything. The birth of stars, the faces of those he had lost, the truth that every mind was a spark of the same flame. He heard Sarai's voice, clear and strong. Ethan, hold on to me. Always, he answered. Then there was silence, a new dawn. When the light faded, the desert was green, where there had been ruins. Now stood a field of silver grass, shimmering under a blue sunrise. The Karnas ships were gone, their metal melted into the soil like rain. At the center of the new landscape rose a crystal spire, the shape of the Luminar seed, but larger, alive, and glowing softly. Inside it, two forms floated, one of light, one of flesh, merged in perfect balance. Sarai's voice echoed through the air. The light, does not belong to one race or world. It belongs to all who see. And we see together. Ethan replied from within the glow. Across the galaxy, signals of peace flared. From human colonies, Velan settlements, even the Karnas themselves. Every being felt a warmth in their hearts they couldn't explain, as if someone had whispered a simple truth into their souls. We are one light. Years later, travelers who passed through the reborn Outpost 12 spoke of a miracle. They said that when the sun set, two shadows appeared on the horizon, a man and a woman walking hand in hand through fields of blue light. And if you stood close enough to the crystal spire and listened, you could still hear her voice carried by the wind. He built a visor for a blind alien girl, and together, they taught the universe how to see. 100 years had passed since the awakening. The old deserts of Outpost 12 were gone. In their place stood Luminar Haven, a vast city of crystal and steel that shone like a sunrise frozen in glass. Towers hummed with quiet blue energy. Rivers of light ran through the streets instead of water. Humans, Velans, and even reformed Karnas lived side by side. Children of every species played in the plazas, their eyes reflecting the same faint glow, the mark of the new generation. They were called the Children of Light. Born after the awakening, each carried a fragment of luminar energy within them, the ability to sense emotion, to share thoughts, to understand without words. No one fought anymore. There were still disagreements, but never war. The old flags and borders had faded into history, replaced by one emblem, a simple spiral made of two lines crossing, the Eye of Luminar, symbol of unity. The Legacy Hall. At the city center stood a great monument known as the Heart Spire. Its surface rippled with soft light, and within it rested two shapes forever intertwined, a man and a woman made of pure energy, holding hands. Ethan Cole and Sarai. Every year, people gathered at its base for the Day of Sight, a celebration marking the moment when light returned to the world. On that day, the sky turned the same shade of blue it had on the morning after the awakening. Inside the spire, the light pulsed gently, as if alive. Many believed that Ethan and Sarai still watched over them, guiding the balance between human will and luminar wisdom. A young dreamer. One evening, a young girl named Lyra Cole, a descendant of Ethan's brother, walked to the glowing fields beyond the city walls. She was 15, curious and stubborn, with short brown hair and a strange visor resting over her eyes. It was a replica of the one Ethan built long ago, but redesigned for the new age. Her teachers told her it was only symbolic. But when she wore it, she could hear faint whispers, soft and melodic, like a song carried by wind. That night, as the moons rose, she stopped near the ruins of the first workshop, the place where it had all begun. The air shimmered with old energy. Lyra whispered, "Grandfather Ethan, they say you became light. But if you're still out there, can you hear me?" The visor flickered. A voice answered, gentle, ageless, familiar. "I always hear those who still believe." Lyra gasped, her heart racing. "Who are you?" "Someone who once built a visor for a blind girl," the voice said softly. "And someone who learned that true sight comes from the heart." Lyra's eyes widened. "Ethan Cole?" And Sarai, another voice joined, softer, musical. "We are one now, light and life together." Tears filled her eyes. "Then it's true you saved everyone." "We only opened the door," Ethan's voice said. "It's your generation that walked through it." Lyra looked around, feeling the faint pulse of light beneath her feet. "The world feels alive." "It is," Sarai replied. "Every plant, every breath, every being shares the same current. You are all connected, the children of light." The hidden warning. Lyra hesitated. "Then why do I sometimes feel shadows?" "At night, the light trembles." The voices grew quieter. "Because balance is never permanent," Ethan said. "Even light casts a shadow." "There are minds that still crave control," Sarai added gently. "Those who wish to cage the luminar power again." Lyra clenched her fists. "Then tell me what to do. I'll stop them." A warm laugh echoed. "Courage runs strong in the coal line," Ethan said. "But you must remember, light cannot be forced. It must be shared. Teach, don't destroy." Lyra nodded slowly. Then I'll learn. I'll protect this peace. And when the darkness rises, Sarai whispered, look for us in the light. The glow faded, leaving only the soft hum of wind and stars. The spark reborn. The next morning, Lyra returned to Luminar Haven. She climbed the steps of the Heart Spire and stood before the crowd gathering for the festival. Her visor glowed faintly, catching the first rays of dawn. When she spoke, her voice carried farther than she expected, not loud, but clear, steady, filled with something older than her years. Once, a human engineer built a visor for someone who could not see, she said. He didn't know it would change the galaxy. He only wanted to help one life. That's how all light begins, with kindness. The people listened in silence. Even the spire itself seemed to glow brighter. Ethan Cole and Sarai taught us that sight is more than eyes, and peace is more than silence. The light they left us isn't just energy. It's a promise that we will never stop seeing each other as one. Her visor flared blue, and for a heartbeat every mind in the crowd connected, feeling one another's warmth, joy, sorrow, and hope. The air trembled with emotion. Children laughed and cried at the same time. The crowd bowed their heads, overwhelmed. Lyra looked up at the spire. You're still here, she whispered. And from within the crystal, two voices answered together, carried by the wind. Always. That night, as Luminar Haven slept beneath its twin moons, a faint light rose from the Heart Spire and drifted into the stars. The universe watched and listened. And for the first time in centuries, the galaxy dreamed not of conquest, but of creation. Because one human had once built a visor for a blind alien girl, and that small act of compassion had taught countless worlds what it truly meant to see. Many years had passed since the first awakening. The galaxy glowed with peace, but even peace has corners the light does not reach. At the edge of the known systems, a faint signal pulsed through the dark. It carried an echo of the old luminar frequency, soft, broken, but familiar. It whispered only one word: help. Lyra Cole heard it first. Now grown into a young explorer and scientist, she had devoted her life to studying the energy her ancestors had awakened. Inside her ship, the Aurora Child, the signal trembled across her instruments like a heartbeat calling from far away. She adjusted the visor she always wore. Ethan's final design, upgraded with her own touch. Sarai, Ethan, do you hear that? A faint shimmer filled the cabin. Their blended voices replied, inside her mind. Yes, Lyra, that light is fading. Someone is losing sight. She frowned. Then I'm going to find them. The journey beyond. For 3 days she traveled beyond the mapped stars, following the pulse through empty space. Outside her window, nebulae drifted like slow oceans of color. The further she went, the darker the stars became, until at last she saw it, a world half dead, half glowing, floating in silence. When her ship landed, dust rose around the landing struts. The ground was cracked and gray. The sky hung low and red, like an endless wound. In the distance, ruins shimmered. A city once bright with luminar light, now drained and hollow. Lyra whispered, this place, it used to be alive. It was one of the first colonies. Ethan's voice answered. They tried to awaken the light too fast and lost control. But the seed still beats beneath the surface. Sarai added gently. Someone must be keeping alive. The last keeper. Lyra followed the signal into the ruins until she reached an underground chamber. There, surrounded by broken machines and flickering crystals, knelt a figure, old, frail, but glowing faintly blue. He turned as she entered. His eyes shone with light. You wear the mark of the first engineer, he said weakly. Are you his blood? Lyra nodded. Ethan Cole was my ancestor. Who are you? I am Orin, he whispered. The last keeper of this world. The light here is dying. She stepped closer. The floor beneath her hummed with faint energy. The old man trembled. I've kept it alive for centuries, he said. But the people left. They forgot. Now the seed fades, and soon the shadow will return. Lyra looked around the ruined chamber. Then we'll bring it back. Together. Orin smiled faintly. You have his eyes and her light. The second awakening. Lyra placed her hands on the cracked core of the old luminar seed. The surface was cold and silent. She closed her eyes. "Show me what you showed them," she whispered. The visor glowed. A soft hum filled the room. Then darkness. She saw visions. The wars, the first awakening, the peace that followed, and the growing emptiness between the stars. The light had connected millions of minds, but distance had begun to dull the bond. Worlds were drifting apart again. Lyra's heart ached. "We lost each other," she murmured. "Then remind them." Sarai's voice said within her, "Show them what unity feels like again." Ethan's voice followed, strong and proud. "One act of kindness saved the galaxy once. It can save it again." Lyra took a deep breath and whispered, "Then let there be light." The visor flared. Energy surged through her veins, not pain but warmth, like holding 1,000 hands at once. The seed blazed alive, filling the chamber with blue fire. Orin felt his knees, tears in his glowing eyes. "It's beautiful." The eternal signal. Across the galaxy, ships, colonies, and stations felt the pulse. Lights flickered. People stopped what they were doing and looked to the sky. The stars shimmered as if breathing. For one heartbeat, every being shared the same vision. Ethan and Sarai, hand in hand, standing beside Lyra beneath an endless horizon. A message echoed through every mind. The light is eternal only when it is shared. The transmission traveled faster than any wave, not through space, but through thought. On distant worlds, enemies lowered their weapons. Forgotten friends sent messages of forgiveness. Machines powered down their weapons and began to heal. The last goodbye. When the glow faded, Lyra found herself lying on the chamber floor. The seed pulsed steadily again, alive and strong. Orin was gone, vanished into the light, leaving only peace behind. She touched her visor. "Ethan?" "Sarai." Their voices answered softly. "We're proud of you." Her eyes filled with tears. "Is this goodbye?" "No," Sarai said gently. "You've carried us further than we ever dreamed. Now the light belongs to you," Ethan added, "and to everyone who will come after." The glow around her brightened until she could no longer see the walls. "Where will you go?" she asked. "Everywhere," they said together. "Into every heart that chooses to see." And then they were gone. The vision lives on. Years later, when travelers visited the reborn world, they found a new monument standing above the desert, a slender tower of silver, crowned by a single glowing visor. Beneath it were carved these words: "One human built a visor for a blind alien girl. Together they built a bridge between worlds. Their light lives forever." Children touched the carving and felt warmth spread through their fingers. They didn't know exactly who Ethan or Sarai were, but they knew one thing. Because of them, no one walked blind anymore. And on clear nights, when the sky turned blue and the stars whispered softly, some swore they could still hear two voices intertwined among the constellations. "We see you, and we are still here. The end Milky Way."